My selfish parents only had eyes for him, the golden child I could never live up to. They didn't even notice when I moved to another state. When they eventually came begging, I said one thing that broke them completely. My name's Ethan, and if I had to sum up my family dynamic in one word, it would be unbalanced. As a kid, my parents, Mark and Linda, didn't just have a preference. They had a chosen one. My younger brother Ryan was the shining star. He was their pride, their joy, the one they constantly showered with affection, praise, and endless encouragement. And me? I was practically invisible, given just enough acknowledgement to survive, but never enough to feel truly valued. Ryan had that magnetic charm people were naturally drawn to. From the moment he could walk, he was all smiles, chatter, and energy, instantly winning everyone over. To my parents, he was nothing short of miraculous. Meanwhile, I was the quiet, reserved kid, the one who found solace in books, sketching, and working on small projects in my room. I wasn't the kind of child who lit up a room, and that, I guess, made me unremarkable in their eyes. The favoritism was subtle at first. Ryan would get more toys than me. Initially, I assumed it was because he was younger, that they were simply trying to keep him happy. But as we grew older, it became obvious. It wasn't about age. It was about him being their golden boy and me being the afterthought. Birthday celebrations painted the clearest picture. Ryan's birthdays were grand affairs, lavish parties, pricey presents, the full package. Mine, a simple cake and a quick happy birthday before the conversation shifted back to Ryan's latest accomplishment. One year, I asked for a professional art kit. Instead, they bought me a set of cheap pens from the dollar store. That same year, Ryan received a brand new bike. But it wasn't just about the material things. The emotional neglect cut much deeper. In middle school, I once got straight A's and couldn't wait to share the news, hoping it might finally earn me some recognition. I showed my report card to my mom, hoping at least for a "good job, Ethan." She barely glanced at it before mumbling, "That's nice," and turning her full attention to gushing over Ryan's latest basketball game. He wasn't even particularly good at it, but somehow his 2 points in a middle school match were more exciting to her than my academic success. It became a pattern I couldn't ignore. If Ryan showed an interest in something, my parents went all in, buying equipment, enrolling him in classes, and cheering him on enthusiastically. If I expressed a passion, getting them to even listen was an uphill battle. Once I told them I wanted to open a small online shop selling handmade crafts. I had saved up for months and only needed a little extra to buy supplies. My dad laughed and said, "Don't waste time on that nonsense. Focus on something practical." A few months later, Ryan announced he wanted to launch a fitness gear brand. My parents didn't hesitate. They handed him money, helped buy equipment, paid for a professional website, and even hired a designer for his logo. I remember watching all of it unfold, wondering why everything came so easily to him while I had to beg for scraps. By the time high school rolled around, I had given up expecting anything from them. Ryan was their world. I was just another occupant of their house, barely acknowledged. They were so obsessed with Ryan's success that they never realized how much I was withdrawing. Ryan, of course, reveled in being the favorite. He carried himself with a smugness that showed he knew exactly where he stood. If I got a new pair of shoes, he'd make snide remarks like finally ditching those hand-me-downs. If I tried to join a conversation at dinner, he would cut me off and steer the topic back to himself. It wasn't just irritating, it was humiliating. I didn't feel like I belonged, and my parents never once corrected him. Whenever I tried to voice my hurt, they brushed it off. "Don't be so sensitive," they'd say, or "Ryan's just kidding around." One moment is seared into my memory. It was my senior year of high school, and I had entered a regional entrepreneurship competition. I spent weeks crafting my business plan, building prototypes, and practicing my pitch. When I won first place, I rushed home, glowing with pride, thinking, just maybe, they would finally be proud. My dad's reaction? "That's nice. Did you see Ryan's new logo? Looks so professional." My mom didn't even lift her eyes from her phone. That night, I cried alone in my room, not because I needed their approval anymore, but because I realized I'd never have it. That night cemented my decision. I had to leave. I couldn't spend another year living in a house where I was invisible and unappreciated. I started quietly making plans to get out as soon as I graduated. But of course, leaving wasn't going to be simple. My parents had poured so much money into Ryan's ventures that there wasn't anything left for me. When I told them I planned to move out and work on starting my own small business, they shut me down immediately. Dad told me, "We can't afford to split our focus right now. Ryan's business is the future of this family." It felt like a slap across the face. They didn't even bother to consider what I wanted, too busy keeping Ryan propped up. That's when I finally realized if I wanted something better, I'd have to create it for myself without any help from them. And that's exactly what I did. After the disaster of my high school years and years of favoritism, I knew I had to break free. Whatever faith I still had in them evaporated when they invested thousands into Ryan's half-baked ideas while outright dismissing my ambitions. That was the final push I needed. I realized no one was going to hand me anything. I'd have to build my future from scratch. And after years of being ignored, I learned it was smarter to move in silence. I didn't broadcast my plans to my parents. Why would I, when I already knew how little they cared? Instead, I worked quietly behind the scenes. I started saving every dollar I could. I took part-time jobs after school, tutoring, babysitting, and even freelancing online. I lied and said I was volunteering at the library or studying at friends' houses. They didn't question it. They were too busy hovering over Ryan. With the money I scraped together, I taught myself how to run a business. I stayed up late watching videos on marketing, web design, and sourcing products. It wasn't glamorous. I worked hunched over a tiny desk in my room, hiding my screen whenever someone walked by. It felt sneaky, but it was exhilarating. For once, I was working towards something that belonged to me. My business idea was simple: customizable products like mugs, tote bags, and stationery targeted at niche groups. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was something I cared about. I spent months researching trends, designing prototypes, and finding a small supplier willing to work with my limited budget. The first time I made a sale, just $15 for a custom mug, it felt like winning the lottery. Someone out there valued what I had created. Meanwhile, Ryan's business was falling apart. He came home from team meetings, really just hangouts with his lazy friends, grumbling about how hard it was to find clients. My parents didn't hold him accountable. Instead, they kept throwing money at his failures. They paid for new equipment, hired a marketing consultant, and even leased a small office space for him. I overheard Dad telling Ryan, "These things take time, son. You're building something great." It took every ounce of strength not to laugh. Ryan barely lifted a finger, yet my parents acted like he was the next big thing. Meanwhile, I was quietly scaling my operation. Through clever social media marketing and word of mouth, my shop began to pick up momentum. I posted on niche forums, subtly plugging my products without being too obvious. Slowly but steadily, orders trickled in. By the time I graduated, I was making enough to live on. Of course, I didn't tell my parents. They still thought I was floundering. When I announced I planned to move out, their response was barely lukewarm. Dad said, "Good for you. Maybe you can help Ryan out more now that you'll have some free time." I clenched my jaw to keep from snapping back. Instead, I just smiled and said, "Sure, Dad." Little did they know, I wasn't moving down the street. I had already leased a tiny office in a neighboring state, far enough that surprise visits wouldn't be a problem. It wasn't glamorous, peeling wallpaper, creaky floors, a second-hand desk, but it was mine. I signed the lease the day after graduation. For the first time ever, I felt like I was truly free. I spent the first few days setting up the space, arranging my desk, setting up my computer, organizing supplies. It was exhausting but thrilling at the same time. One of my first moves after settling in was expanding my product line. I added personalized notebooks and planners, which turned out to be a massive hit. I also began offering custom designs for bulk orders, perfect for corporate gifts and wedding favors. The business grew faster than I ever dared hope. Within the first year, I was earning enough to hire a part-time assistant to help with packaging and shipping. By the second year, I upgraded to a larger office and added 2 more team members. Meanwhile, my parents remained completely clueless. They assumed I was picking up random jobs here and there, maybe still helping Ryan. They never asked for details, and I never offered any. The irony was almost too much to handle. Ryan's business predictably had crashed and burned. The fancy office space my parents rented for him sat empty most of the time. His website was abandoned. Dad still clung to hope, muttering things like, "These things take time." But even he sounded tired now. By my third year, my business was booming beyond my wildest dreams. Multiple revenue streams, loyal customers, partnerships with local shops. I had it all. I didn't just feel successful, I felt vindicated. They had invested everything into Ryan and ignored me, and now I was the one who succeeded. But the funny part was, they still had no clue. Every time I came home for a rare holiday visit, Dad would ask the same thing. "So Ethan, when are you going to get serious about your career?" I had to bite my tongue not to laugh. I'd just shrug and say, "I'm working on it, Dad," and let them believe whatever they wanted. Little did they know I was thriving. One morning, as I was planning a product launch from my office, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Normally, I let those go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Hey, Ethan, it's Dad." I froze. My father never called unless he needed something. Leaning back in my chair, I said casually, "Hey, Dad." "What's going on?" There was an awkward silence before he spoke. "Well, Ryan's working on a new business idea. We're all pitching in to help him get it off the ground again. We were hoping you could come home for a family meeting to brainstorm ideas and support him." There it was. The real reason for the call. I laughed out loud before I could stop myself. "You want me to help Ryan start another business?" I asked, incredulous. "Don't laugh, Ethan," Dad said a bit sharply. "He's learned from his past mistakes. Families should stick together, especially during hard times." I leaned forward on my desk, voice steady. "Dad, why would I do that? You've never once asked for my help before." There was a long pause. I could almost picture him rubbing his temples in frustration. "Look, Ethan, it's not just about Ryan. It's about the family's reputation. People are starting to talk, asking why Ryan can't seem to make anything work." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about supporting Ryan. It wasn't about family. It was about saving face. They didn't want Ryan to succeed because they believed in him. They just didn't want to look bad. "Sorry, Dad," I said coolly. "I have my own business to run. I don't have time to babysit Ryan's failures." That's when the guilt trip started. Dad launched into a speech about all they'd sacrificed, about how hard it was raising 2 boys, about how I should be grateful. I listened quietly, then said, "I'm not coming home, Dad. I have too much going on." There was silence, then a threat. "If you don't come, we'll cut off your financial support." I almost laughed again. "Dad, I haven't needed your money in years." He sounded stunned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smirked. "It means I've been running my own business for years. I'm doing just fine." He stammered in disbelief. "You're joking." "Nope. I've built a thriving business without a dime from you." There was another long pause. Then he hung up without a word. I thought that would be the end of it. But of course it wasn't. The next day, Mom called. "Ethan, sweetheart, we need to talk," she said in that soft, pleading voice she used when she wanted something. "What do you need, Mom?" She sighed heavily. "It's about Ryan. He's stressed, and we're worried about him. It would mean a lot if you came home to support him. He's your brother." I gritted my teeth. "Mom, I'm not coming home. I have my own life now. Ryan's not my responsibility." "But we're family," she cried, her voice cracking. "You can't just turn your back on us." I stayed calm. "I didn't turn my back on you. You turned your back on me a long time ago." There was silence. Then she sniffled. "We just want what's best for everyone. Can't you see that?" "No, Mom. You've always wanted what's best for Ryan, not for me." I hung up before she could say anything else. After that, the calls kept coming. Dad left angry voicemails, calling me selfish and ungrateful. Mom sent long texts about family, love, and guilt. I ignored them. Then I heard from an old high school friend. Apparently, Dad had gone to the local college, the one they thought I was attending, and tried to access my records. When they told him I wasn't enrolled, he lost it. A few days later, another furious call came from Dad. "What the hell have you been doing with all the money we sent you for tuition?" I couldn't help but laugh. "I used it to start my business, Dad. Thanks for the seed funding." "You lied to us!" he shouted. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "For who?" I shot back. "I'm doing just fine." He tried to rant about trust and betrayal, but I cut him off. "You want to talk about trust? Where was that when I needed it? Where was that when I was working my butt off and you couldn't even bother to notice?" He hung up again. After that, things were quiet for a while, or so I thought. About a week later, my receptionist buzzed into my office. Ethan, there's a woman here saying she's your mom." I sighed. "Send her in." Mom walked into my office, looking around in disbelief. "This is nice," she said awkwardly. "Thanks," I replied coldly. "What are you doing here?" She sighed, clutching her purse strap tightly. "I wanted to talk face to face. You've been ignoring our calls. Your father and I are worried about you." I leaned back, arms crossed. "Worried? Since when?" "Don't be like that, Ethan. We're family. Families argue sometimes, but they stay together." I wasn't buying it. "Is that why you're here? To guilt trip me into coming back?" Her face fell. "We realize we made mistakes. We were too focused on Ryan. We want to make it up to you." I snorted. "You didn't even know what I was doing until last week. Now you want to make up for it. Because Ryan failed and you're desperate." Her cheeks flushed red. "That's not fair." "Don't rewrite history," I snapped. "Just tell me what you really want." She hesitated. Finally, she admitted it. "We're in a financial bind. Ryan's last venture drained us. We were hoping you could lend us some money." I let out a bitter laugh. "Of course. It always comes down to money." "It's not just that," she insisted. "We want to rebuild our relationship too." I stared at her for a long moment. "You ignored me for years. You don't get to come back now because you need a bailout." She stiffened. "You're being selfish." I stood up, pointing toward the door. And you treated me like I didn't exist. Goodbye, Mom. Without another word, she left, slamming the door behind her. Conclusion ending. A few days later, Ryan showed up. He looked rough, unshaven, exhausted, desperate. "Ethan, man, can we talk?" he said. I sighed. "What do you want, Ryan?" He slumped into a chair. "I messed up. Everything's falling apart. Mom and Dad are blaming me for everything. I don't know what to do. I need your help." I stared at him. "You need my help? After everything?" He hung his head. "I know I was a jerk. I didn't realize how badly I hurt you. I'm sorry. It was too little. Too late. I've moved on, Ryan. I'm not getting dragged back into this mess." He stood up, defeated. "I guess I deserve that. I'm sorry, Ethan." Without another word, he left. And just like that, my phone finally went quiet. No more calls, no more texts, no more desperate pleas. I was free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the background character in someone else's story. I was the main character of my own. And I wasn't looking back. If you enjoyed this story and felt the emotions behind it, don't forget to give it a like, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences and heartfelt stories. Your support means the world, and it helps us bring more content like this to you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.